Hi, my name is Jen, and I'm going to talk to you about a career that's in the shadows. Has this ever happened to you? You do a majority of the work, only the supervisor gets all the credit. Or maybe you're a person who works side by side with a student every day, all day, and it's the teacher that gets the thank you cards and words of appreciation. You don't want to be the star of the classroom, but a little recognition is appreciated. After all, it lets us know that we are doing well and that we should continue doing what we're doing in our profession. If you're a paraprofessional, you understand firsthand what I'm referring to. We work in classrooms alongside teachers for less pay and fewer benefits. We work through breaks and often use our own resources to help enhance learning. We are side by side helping students achieve goals and surpass them. Unfortunately, we are not invited to conferences or IEPs and often get pertinent information secondhand. And worse, parents and administration often treat paraprofessionals at a second rate level compared to educators or other supportive staff or administrative staff within the school. Paraprofessionals are the backbone of a classroom with little recognition, less compensation. However, there are opportunities to gain valuable skills from a career in the shadows. How did the paraprofessional become a paraprofessional? I wondered this myself, so I looked it up. And I'm going to give just a brief history lesson. In the 1950s, post World War II, there was a shortage of licensed teachers, and there was a fledgling effort of parents to develop a community based service for children and adults with disabilities. And that stimulated interest in the employment of teachers' aides or paraprofessionals, or now also known as the in school support staff or ISS. For this presentation, I will just refer to the word para or paraprofessionals. So later, during the 1960s and 70s, the value of having a para in a classroom began to take notice. During that time, two studies were conducted to assess the appropriate of employing teachers' aides to the appropriateness of employing teachers' aides to support teacher planning and instructional duties. So the studies took place in two different areas. The first one was in Bay City, Michigan, where they trained and hired college educated women who were not quite yet licensed. The second location was Syracuse University, and that study was to assess the efficacy of teacher aides and paraprofessionals within special education. Both studies had favorable results, which later played an important role in the passing of the Bill of Education for All Handicapped Children's Act, which is later then known as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. Great news for paras, right? Not quite. The road is going to get very bumpy for this profession and almost disappear altogether. Federal funding was not available to support training or hiring of paras, so therefore the responsibility was left to each state. At that time, there was a program, or I would say a department, that was trying to develop a program as an overarching credentials list for paraprofessionals so that every school could utilize that. However, because there was not funding support back then, and it wasn't mandatory, states had the choice if they wanted to use that program, and many chose not to. Therefore, not only did the program become was not enforced, um, funding also within each state decreased, and so did the interest of the position itself. A decade later, in the 80s, reform of education took place. We were not doing as well, and we needed to educate teachers on the new complexities within the education and and educational standards. But guess who got left out of the reform? You guessed it, paraprofessionals. Mainly for two reasons. One was the lack of understanding how important the role was, and two was the lack of training for teachers on how to lead paras in their classroom. Unfortunately, with the decrease in funding and the decrease in interest and all of these decreasings, para position became known as, quote, the forgotten members of education teams. That's where it almost disappeared. But soon came the 90s with plaid shirts and overalls and Boys to Men on every single radio. There was also a hyper focus on special education, which basically saved the position of paraprofessionals. Existing laws, remember the idea? That law and others that were amended with it were also amended to focus on hiring and training paraprofessionals. And therefore, that's what happens. They started becoming, schools started being able to hire and have the support to hire and fund this need. What a journey for this position. It was, yeah. However, 55 years later, paras are in most general and special education classrooms. However, there's still a struggle to gain that full inclusion, such as, remember what I was saying with the conferences and the IEPs not being included. So we're still working on inclusion, and we're still working on compensation that's adequate. Paras work long hours, just the same as the teachers. There are various classrooms, especially in special ed. Sometimes get a lunch break, sometimes get a shortened one, sometimes not at all. And often paras have to have two jobs. I myself need a second part-time job because the lack of the lack of adequate compensation with two jobs, most of us still live just barely above the poverty line. So that still needs a little work. Paras, they get paid half the teacher's salary and they get paid hourly, not as a salary. And a lot of schools don't pay hourly over holiday pay. A lot of schools are also recognizing that they need to amend that. That's great news. Paras work very closely with the students, and often with their one-on-one, they know more about what's going on with that student and how they're progressing than the teacher does. However, a lot of times when they are asked the progression of that particular student, they will often address just the teacher and not include the para. Again, I know this firsthand and I've witnessed it, but I also appreciate that there is amendments to that, and we are starting to see a little bit of change. Recently, I was informed that paraprofessionals, or ISS, are the only position that employees do not benefit financially after receiving a higher level of education. So, though they will not ever be in the same bracket as a teacher because teachers earned their bracket, if I were to get my bachelor's degree and show it to HR, I would not be put in a higher pay bracket for that department. And paras are the only ones that do not qualify for this for some reason. Which brings me to the question, wouldn't we want to have educated individuals co-teach our children? But as frustrating and sometimes deflating as some of these points are, there is good news. Going through slides and looking for research on this topic, I came upon a poster that said, "Paraprofessionals are teachers' superheroes." I was appreciative and it was flattering, but mostly I can now understand being in the position I've been in for a few years and working in various schools at various departments for the last 20 something years. Um, this now makes sense. There's a truth to this. Teachers, they are amazing. We need teachers. We have noticed that more so they have less time to teach because they are so inundated with the administrative and testing portions of their job. So they need paras to co-teach basically. Now, I have noticed teachers that were once paras before they became a teacher have a completely different respect for their paras. It shows in their mutual respect and their advocacy as they will redirect a conversation. If it's about someone with a student with the one-on-one, they will say, well, let's ask the para. They work very closely and include them, which is great, which is really great. I work with a teacher that was a para for 12 years while she was getting back to the workforce and while she was obtaining her degree in special education. 8 out of those 12 years, she told me she was in one classroom with the same teacher. And she said it broke her heart that every holiday and special appreciation teacher day, she would walk in the classroom and she would see the teacher's desk, as she said, had an abundance of gifts and thank yous. And then she would look at her desk and often there would be nothing on it. Or sometimes she said one gift from the student she worked very closely with. She said it broke her heart. It made her feel so unvalued and unimportant. That made me pretty sad too. But now the gifts, of course, is not the point of the story. However, it's a good analogy to one of my points in my presentation. Parents often forget to appreciate the value of having a parent in the classroom. And despite many negative things that inflate these challenges in the very bumpy road it has taken to get us this far, there are some positive things about choosing a career or at least a start as a paraprofessional. First, some paras get the same benefits as teachers, and even retirement plans. Educational retirement plans are fantastic. It is a very rewarding career to be a part of something to help a student. I personally can't express this enough to know the joy that I get to be a part of a team to watch these students grow and become so proud of themselves. It's amazing. Spending time as a paraprofessional, you get to learn from different teachers. And if teaching is the career you would like to go into, it is a great way to change, adapt your own skills, learn different ways of teaching, ways maybe you're not so comfortable with, ways that you may want to focus more in onto. It's a great way to learn the ins and outs in a safe environment without the liability or responsibility that a teacher has at that time. So it's a great stepping stone. It is also a great way to know if teaching is right for you. I know of two people that they were planning on being teachers. They started to work as a para. They lasted 1 year and said, it's not for me. Therefore, they saved money and time. It looks great on a resume. It's a great stepping stone. It's a great way to get back into the workforce. And it's a great way to work with your children in the same school district. So, as I've demonstrated today, the position of a paraprofessional, it takes endurance. And although I am happy to see the changes in recognition and compensation, administration and parents still have a little bit ways to go. And remembering that we show up every day for the students and we do make a difference in lives, and it's worth every minute. So in conclusion, if you're a parent who has a child that has a paraprofessional in the classroom, take a moment maybe this next week and thank them along with the teacher. If you're an educator that has a para, I encourage you to find ways to recognize their contributions to the students and achievements, sometimes even with the parents around. As a career in paraprofessional, it is just as much as hard work. Anybody in education knows that. But they are truly are the backbone of the classroom. Just like stilts on a high rise, you take the stilts away, it affects the entire infrastructure. And yes, the pay is not what it should be. However, the opportunities will present themselves, allowing you to gain in the shadows, allow you to shine through your student and through your future career. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.